really easy to run the test to see things like, do I have enough magnesium? Is my methylation working properly? Am I detoxifying well? And when you are able to address each part of detoxification, which really is running on nutrients, and so many people are deficient, it all works much smoother and is more effective.
It's better to actually spend the money, get the right tests, and supplement and use supplements as an adjunct to a super healthy diet so we can have this unprecedented opportunity in human history to push that envelope of human longevity and be super healthy in our later years.
So then when you're taking these things, what's happening is it's designed in a way in which to have parasites eat these substances and then be poisoned by them. So they're not poisonous to you, but they are poisonous to the parasites. And so then you're able to then kill the parasites that way.
Welcome to episode 2 of Supplements Revealed. In episode 1, we heard from the likes of Dr. Stephen Gundry. What an amazing human being, brilliant and great information that to me is truly life-changing. But it doesn't stop there. In episode 2, we have a lineup for you that's going to be a real gift to you. The wisdom, information, and scope of what is covered is something that is transformative. It is our desire to have a massive impact on your life through this information. And I know that there is a lot of it. This is a big world to sort through, which is why we encourage you to also own Supplements Revealed. Not only will you be supporting our mission, but it's also something that on a personal level will pay dividends to you and the ones that you care about for years to come. So get ready. We are action-packed in this episode, and I'm looking forward to delivering it to you right now. Why would people fly from all over the country to go to a particular doctor? Such is the case for my next interviewee, Dr. Ann Shippey. Dr. Shippey is a medical doctor who practices something called functional medicine, which you'll learn about in a few moments. I've often wondered myself, if I was a medical doctor and my only tool was to write a prescription for a drug no matter what types of problems people were having, it would feel inherently limited. Well, Dr. Shippey, in practicing functional medicine, has expanded her toolbox to include supplementation and applications of it in ways that are helping people all over the country. So you're going to learn a lot here. She has an amazing story, and I think it's going to inspire you and help you to a healthier future. Ann, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Please tell me about who you are and what it is that you do.
I am Ann Shippey, and I am a functional medicine physician, but I came this path a little bit a circuitous route. I was a chemical engineer and I worked for IBM for 10 years and was really loving my career, and all of a sudden I got sick. I was on the fast track and making a really big contribution, and I couldn't get the answers that I needed from the medical community. And so I had to start figuring it out myself after going to about 8 or 9 different doctors. I was like, okay, it was before the internet. So I started reading everything that I could find and then seeing some other types of practitioners. So I saw a nutritionist, an acupuncturist, a naturopath, an allergist who was doing some unusual things, and really changing my diet and taking some supplements, and finally figured out how to get myself well. And then one morning woke up and decided to go to medical school. And I've really found that functional medicine is a great way to do what I was trying to do for myself all those years ago, where I could really delve into their biochemistry and physiology and look for the most holistic way possible to help them get better. And a lot of times it does involve supplementation based on lab testing. So I do a lot of laboratory testing on my patients because they're really coming to me to do the detective work. Not just do the band-aiding of the symptoms, but really finding the root cause and then helping them to get better. So with my MD and with my functional medicine certification, I can combine the best of both worlds.
Most of the doctors that I've met in functional medicine typically were practicing in more of a conventional way. And then something happened. They got sick, a family member got sick, they exhausted all the traditional medical options, and then went into these alternative approaches to get well, and then the lights go on, they get excited, now they have a whole new kind of practice. For many of them, sadly, they also start to make less money. But now you came at it kind of the opposite way.
So I knew I wanted to practice medicine differently. I knew that there had to be a different approach. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I wanted the credibility and the foundation and the good things that an MD degree would bring, because there really is a time and a place for having the more acute care things that we do in allopathic medicine. But then once I finished medical school, I had a child in med school and a child in residency. So I had 2 young children when I was finished, and I was kind of tired doing med school in my 30s. So I went into just a regular traditional medical practice. I did that for about 3 years, 2.5 years, and I got sick again. I developed a couple of autoimmune disorders. And after going to the rheumatologist and knowing a lot about rheumatology myself, it's like, yeah, no, I'm not taking those medications. I need to, my kids are at the point where I feel like I can go back and do some additional training. And that's when I found functional medicine. They were the only people that I knew that were doing any training that really gets us back to the biochemistry and physiology and looks at the person as a whole. What's going on in your gut that can affect your brain, your skin, the whole rest of your body. So we look at the system as a whole.
Let's talk about autoimmune. This is one area where the illness is very chronic, and in conventional medical systems, people are even damaged over time by treatment. How do you normally deal with someone who comes in like that?
I love working on autoimmune disorders because I've seen such an amazing reversal with what I do. And in myself, in my own body, I got to experience that where, I had an autoimmune disorder that made me at an increased risk for having a stroke called antiphospholipid antibody. And then I also had the autoimmune disorder where your eyes and your mouth get very dry and extremely uncomfortable. So the problem with the way that we do things in allopathic medicine and just prescribe a medication is that the underlying process of what is causing the immune system to react abnormally and actually attack itself, that underlying cause is not addressed. And so what happens a lot of times is you go from one autoimmune disorder to the next, or other bad things really start happening if you don't get to the root cause. And that's really the problem with just suppressing the symptoms and suppressing the immune system with the medications that are used.
I know one of the areas that you're known for is mold. Can you talk a little bit about mold and what people can do about it?
So I think mold is an epidemic in our country and probably many places around the world because of how we're building buildings and because there's mold contamination in our food. The thing that I see the biggest impact from in my practice is from the building exposures. So a lot of times people think about mold as just the mold spores and that it's an allergen or it can cause asthma. Mm-hmm. But the biggest problem with mold is that it makes toxins called mycotoxins or MBOCs, that the most toxic ones can cause things like cancer. They can be toxic for the liver, for the neurological system, poison the mitochondria, poison the cell membranes. So they can really affect any part of the body and cause a lot of symptoms and a lot of disorders. So there's a lot of research now that's coming out that's really linking the mycotoxins with almost every disorder that you find, including autoimmunity.
So when you have someone show up and you suspect mold, how do you help them?
So it can be very complex or it can be very simple. So sometimes it's just a matter of moving where they're living. But more often than not, the person has really built up a high amount of environmental toxins, including mold, in their body because they don't detoxify optimally or they've had a pretty big exposure. So then we have to use things like supplements to help get their detoxification pathways working more optimally. So the exciting thing is that people can be extremely ill. So one of my last health journeys was to get very sick from mold, which gave me the great opportunity to learn more about mold and how to help my patients better, and to write books and speak on it so that people can be informed and not just be suffering from this hidden illness. So we do things like use liposomal glutathione and some of the natural binders like modified citrus pectin, clay, and charcoal to help to get the toxins out of their body. We can use some things like hyperbarics and infrared sauna, some clay and salt baths to really amplify the effects of the detoxification. And then a lot of times the people that are the sickest don't have methylation pathways that work very well. So there is a lot of supplementation that can actually help them methylate better, which means that they can do repair better and they can also clear the toxins from their body better, including heavy metals. I like to do pretty extensive testing when my patients can afford it because a lot of times it's not covered by insurance. So I like to look at the genes that they have that would predispose them to not methylating very well. And then we can now do some specialty labs where we can look at multiple places in the pathway of methylation and then see if it looks like it's working smoothly. So we can really optimize methylation so that they can, repair their DNA better and clear the toxins better and get just the right supplement program for them. Sometimes it takes a number of iterations to get it just fine-tuned for the particular person. And sometimes it's really simple. It's just a matter of adding some methylated folic acid and some B vitamins. But then other times it's more complicated and we have to have zinc and special forms of B12 and choline and betaine, TMG, to really get things moving smoothly.
I'd like to get your perspective on this. When someone is already supplementing for their health, when is the right time for them to seek out a good functional medicine doctor to guide them along this path?
I think ideally everyone would seek out a functional medicine physician that really, really wants to be proactive about their health, because it's really easy to run the test to see things like, do I have enough magnesium? Is my methylation working properly? Am I detoxifying well? Does it look like my mitochondria working effectively? So that's the ideal, but there's a limit on the number of functional medicine doctors, and a lot of people that's not reasonable because a lot of functional medicine doctors can't spend the time with their patients and take insurance. So then there's certain principles, there are certain things that I see that really everybody needs, and one of them is magnesium. I get to check magnesium on almost all my patients inside the red blood cells, and it's astronomical. Like almost everybody is low in magnesium, and rarely are people in an optimum range. And magnesium is so critical for helping at least 300 enzymes in the body to work properly. So important for certain types of methylation that I talked about previously. And so there are certain things like magnesium, and then also supporting our detoxification pathways. What I'm seeing in my office is that almost everybody is their barrels are filling up, because with the number of environmental pollutants that we're exposed to a little bit every day and that building up in the body, so many people are getting to the point where their barrel is full and their health is starting to suffer as a consequence. So I think that everybody needs to be taking supplements that help to support their detoxification pathways. So things like liposomal glutathione, at least in small amounts to augment the amount of glutathione that they already make in their body, and then some type of binder, so the clay, charcoal, modified citrus pectin, to keep the barrel from filling up and really help to prevent from getting so many illnesses that are related to environmental toxins. Even diabetes now has data that shows your weight is less of a risk than how many the buildup of environmental toxins you have in your body. And then the autoimmune diseases that we're seeing an epidemic around. And then cancer. So many things are related to where that barrel is filled up to with the toxins.
So with magnesium, does it matter what kind you take?
So I consider myself a a connoisseur of several different supplements, and magnesium is one of them. My go-to form of magnesium is magnesium glycinate because it, especially when people take it at night, it can help with relaxing and feeling more ready to go to sleep and staying asleep. But then I love the glycine part of it because it also supports the detoxification pathways. But then I also have a couple of other forms. The other one that I like to use a lot is called magnesium theanine. And theanine is a very good supplement to really help support the brain.
Two areas that are attracting a lot of attention right now are brain health, brain function, and mitochondrial function. What do you recommend about those?
The brain function supplements and the mitochondrial supplements are so integrated. So the brain supplements that I really like include some of the mitochondrial supplements, but one of my favorite supplements for the brain is called phosphatidylcholine. So phosphatidylcholine is one of the forms of choline that really help to build healthy cell membranes. And we need healthy cell membranes to really have a healthy brain because the brain is just chock full of good fats in those cell membranes. And our cell membranes have to be healthy to signal the cells exactly what to be doing correctly and to have healthy receptors that are receiving those signals. Then with the mitochondrial support, I really love a supplement called MitoQ. It's a special form of CoQ10 that gets right into the mitochondria where they need to go because it has a little charge on it. And then it really helps the mitochondria to make good energy. And that helps the entire body, especially the brain. And then when I put those three supplements together, the phosphatidylcholine, the MitoQ, and another one called nicotinamide D-riboside, I see tremendous impacts when people are feeling like they're having some cognitive decline. And then also with people who have had concussion syndromes. When I put those three supplements with something like hyperbaric, they can really get some dramatic improvement.
We actually interviewed the PhD who formulated the MitoQ supplement, and we were really impressed with him. Tell me what you like about it.
Well, one of the things that I love about MitoQ is that they do the research. So a lot of these companies that are providing supplements don't have the budget to be able to provide research. But MitoQ has really invested in doing research to show that their form of CoQ10 is very different than the other forms of CoQ10, in that you can use a very small amount of milligrams and see a tremendous difference in things like cognitive function and cardiovascular function. Mm-hmm. So it's really exciting that they're taking the research so seriously. And then I can take that research and see a difference in my patients. I can see the difference in how patients are their cognitive function and their cardiovascular function.
This is why I like to talk to people who are still working with patients. They're clinicians actually with the people in the field, seeing what is happening. Many times what the experiences of the clinician is not really matched to what the research might tell one. Like, for example, with SSRIs, clinicians were seeing suicides and the pharmaceutical company was saying, no, we did the research and it shows that there's no adverse effect as far as suicide was concerned. But then the clinicians had such robust feedback, it finally got the story out and people realized that these SSRIs were dangerous. So tell me if you see anything that's akin to that relative to supplementation, meaning what supplements are being given out there, and is there anything going on that you're experiencing maybe that doesn't match the research that people should know about?
So I really like my patients to run by me what they're taking, because a lot of times they will see something, see an advertisement and get all excited about it. And then it's not quite aligned with the other things that we have them doing. So I love it when they actually are doing research and bring me ideas about things, but I don't like them to start it until after they run it by me, because a lot of times there's actually a better solution than what they're seeing, or we're actually, if it's something like a resveratrol or Resveracel type product, I want to make sure that they're getting the best quality. And then the other thing that drives me crazy is if they go and buy sub-quality supplements. So I love Costco and Sam's for certain things, but I think people really need to be careful about where they buy their supplements and the quality. So if people are trying to save money on the supplements, I think a lot of times they are probably getting substandard supplements that may not even have in it what they think they're supposed to have in it, or there might be environmental toxins. So especially things like turmeric, the research on that shows that it's heavily contaminated. So you really want to get most of your supplements from a company that's doing very meticulous incoming material checks to make sure they're not putting contaminants into the supplements that already came with the incoming materials.
Are there any brands that you like and trust that you can suggest to people? We don't have an interest in any of them, but we do have an interest in shining a light on them.
There are some companies that I think do a very good job, go above and beyond with their incoming quality controls. So I really like the ones that I'm such a connoisseur. I really do the due diligence to make sure that they have really good quality. So some of the companies that I recommend for patients are Thorne, Zymogen, Designs for Health, Premier Research. Research Nutritionals. They do an amazing job of really researching their products, and they also, do some of the clinical studies to show that they work. And then Quicksilver does a really good job, and they're very careful about the liposomal carriers. So there are certain things that I really like to recommend in a liposomal form, because that means they don't have to go through the digestive system quite the same way. They can just get absorbed and go right into the bloodstream very quickly. There's a particular product called Neo 40. It's a lozenge that helps to increase nitric oxide. I love that for some of my athletes, that they really benefit from having a high nitric oxide level. And then it also really helps with when people go to high altitude, like for here in Texas, being close to sea level and then going to altitude, a lot of people experience altitude sickness. It can be super beneficial from that. So one of the areas that I'm a connoisseur of is liposomal glutathione. So I work with about 6 or 7 different forms of liposomal glutathione, because most of the forms don't taste very good or smell very good, and depending on what the underlying ingredient is. So there's really some great forms of the liposomal glutathione: Research Nutritionals, Quicksilver, Essential Pro.
So if you can leave some of the most important things that people could do to better their life and health, what would the top 3 to 5 be?
I think everybody needs to be taking a form of magnesium. I think most people would benefit from a B complex. I think most people would benefit from doing some things that would help with detoxification, the liposomal glutathione, things like NAC, milk thistle, that really help to get things out of the body, and then add in a binder like Pectisol or clay or charcoal. I think most people would benefit from doing some form of mitochondrial support, because most of us, our mitochondria, are really getting affected by environmental toxins, including mold. So CoQ10 and nicotinamide D-riboside, along with the B vitamins that I mentioned earlier. And I think people can do, even if you're feeling great, you can do a lot of prevention by taking those basic things every day.
A minute ago, you talked about combining CoQ10 with NAD, and it has a really enhanced effect. Is there any other stacks like that you find work real well?
Yes, especially with detoxification. So with the more aspects of the physiology that you support, the better things can work. So detoxification is very complex. And when you are able to address each part of detoxification, which really is running on nutrients, and so many people are deficient. So when you support the liver, when you support the kidney, and when you support the gut, and then at a cellular level, even adding in the mitochondrial support, it all works much smoother and is more effective. A lot of these supplements are very synergistic together. So a little bit of this and a little bit of that is more powerful than a whole lot of one thing. So I really look for ways to get more effect out of each thing that the person is taking.
So do you have an example of something like this?
So with detoxification, when we support the phase 1 part of detoxification, there's a supplement called Metalloclair, which really starts to get things moving at a cellular level. And then with phase 2 part of detoxification, the things like the liposomal glutathione and the glycine to grab it and get it ready to go the rest of the way. And then with the exiting the body, you want to be supporting the gallbladder and the liver with some of the gallbladder supplements, and then the kidney and the gut to really keep things moving. Because one of the really important things for detoxification is to have the bowels moving on a very regular basis. More than once a day is really optimal. So it's using whatever supplementation and dietary changes it takes to do that. One of the other things that I didn't talk about is how important having the diet with the best diet with the supplements. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just going to take these supplements and I'm not going to worry so much about my diet. But that's actually a really great place for synergy, because if you're eating a low inflammation, high nutrient diet, that's an even better foundation for the supplements to work even better. So I consider the high inflammation foods, the gluten, dairy, grains, the moldy foods like peanuts. You want to get those out, and then add in lots of vegetables, especially the cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and kale. But we're not getting the food that's as nutrient dense as we had 20 years ago, 50 years ago, because the soil's getting so depleted. So we need a lot of those trace minerals added in to the supplements as well. So even a good multivitamin or taking a mineral concentrate can be super helpful for adding in. I consider supplements a really important tool in my practice. I get patients that are extremely ill a lot of times, with very severe disorders. And if I didn't have supplements to really help dial in where their biochemistry and physiology is disrupted, I wouldn't be able to help my patients the way that they need to be helped. So when I see things like the legislation or the FDA trying to crank down on what we can recommend and prescribe and access to supplements, it's really concerning. I think it's a right for people to be able to access supplements so that they can help their biochemistry and physiology work better, and that they can heal. It's so critical to not have tighter controls on what we can recommend, but we should have more trust and confidence that the supplements that we're buying are high quality.
If people are looking for a good functional medicine doctor, how can they find one?
There's a website called functionalmedicine.org that you can look up by your zip code and a 100-mile radius, and you'll come up with a list of doctors. Look for the ones that are certified first. Call the office, talk to the staff. When you talk to the staff, you get a pretty good idea of how things are going to run. Ask a few questions to screen them a little bit, and then pick the one that you like the best.
That's terrific, and thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I love it when I experience healthcare providers that see a new and better vision for the people they serve. They've got the guts to be able to go off of the conventional path to higher ground to help people in more profound ways. And that's what I took away from this interview. I hope it inspired you.
Hey, it's Nathan Crane here, stepping in for Patrick Gentempo. It's my honor to introduce the next expert you'll meet in this episode. Dr. Joel Fuhrman is a board-certified family physician and 7-time New York Times best-selling author. He's an internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods. Dr. Fuhrman's 5 hugely successful specials on PBS have brought invaluable nutrition information to homes across America, all while raising over $50 million for public television. If you've ever heard the word nutritarian, it's actually a term that Dr. Fuhrman coined to describe a nutrient-dense eating style designed to prevent cancer, slow aging, and extend lifespan. In this interview, he shares both the key foods and the key supplements that anyone following a plant-based diet needs so you can avoid nutrient deficiencies. And even if you don't follow a plant-based diet, you'll want to take notes about the important blood tests you need your doctor to run for you. And Dr. Fuhrman even shares some invaluable information about preventing cancer. This is a very important interview, so please be sure to watch until the end.
Before we start talking about supplements, the first thing we have to discuss is clearly that the diet that you eat and what natural foods you put in your mouth is the most important indicator of your future health status. And supplements supplement a healthy diet. They don't take the place of a healthy diet. And so we have to look, what's the basic diet people are eating? If they're eating a meat-based diet, for example, then it's difficult to expect high performance and longevity later on in life because you're taking in certain substances that enhance aging and increase risk of disease like cancer and heart disease. Just like a person on a plant-based diet could be eating too much processed carbohydrates or flours or white rice or oils or fried foods, or a plant-based diet doesn't guarantee great health either. But one thing we know that there are so many nutrients that are present in plants, like antioxidants and phytochemicals, and there are thousands of those that cumulatively, in the amount and the variety, protect us against cancer and slow the aging process. So we know that diets high in meat are not just deficient in vitamin C and vitamin E and boron and beta-carotene, but they're also deficient in a lot of other important anti-cancer ingredients that we know now from the recent advances in nutritional science that are so protective for the body to fight cancer and have anti-cellular replication and anti-angiogenic benefits that prevent cells from growing on the body that shouldn't be growing. So we're moving towards advocating a plant-based diet for over the last 2 decades as more research has accumulated to show that diets richer in animal products increase risk of chronic disease and lead for a lower healthy life expectancy, obviously as we age. It's hard for people to realize that because when they're young, they're not feeling the deficiencies of their diet. They're not feeling deficiencies of phytochemicals. They don't have cancer yet. And they're feeling like they feel good, they feel great, thinking what they're eating, so it's good enough. So in general, but animal products do supply certain important nutrients that benefit longevity as well, such as B12, K2, taurine, iron. There's some things that benefit people. So it seems that what we're talking about here in moving people to enhance their longevity and health is reducing or eliminating animal products and losing those nutrients that animal products are rich in and beneficial in, like the benefits of fish, which are high in zinc and high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are beneficial to people. But of course, we can supplement zinc, we can supplement omega-3 fatty acids. We wouldn't supplement, let's say, omega-3 fatty acids in a person eating a lot of fish, but we're no longer recommending people eat much fish because fish is so contaminated with plastics and toxic metals, but mostly microplastics that now have infiltrated even the smaller fish on the coastlines that we used to think were not as toxic as the larger fish like swordfish and tuna that had toxic metal like mercury poisoning in them. And now even the small, and these toxic compounds, even in smaller fish, these microplastics, have endocrine disrupting effects and can also increase risk of cancer and have effects on neurologic deficits in later life. And we're also recommending that we get most of our protein from plants because in the last 2 decades, we've found that's turned nutritional science upside down, the recognition that more plant protein makes for longer lifespan and more animal protein shortens human lifespan because it revs up systems of aging too rapidly and pushes up growth hormones too far. So that being said, we have to look at the question that as you move your diet towards a plant-based diet or maybe all plants, and your animal products are insignificant or zero, then what nutrients are suboptimal on this plant-centered diet? And let's list those, which could be, and I hope I can include most of them here, mostly B12, right? B12 we know we have to get from plants. But another one we talked about is zinc, because zinc absorption decreases as we age, and having optimal levels of zinc are important for protecting against infection and cancer as we get older. Prostate cancer, pneumonia, even now with the growth of COVID, zinc plays a huge role. So taking zinc as a plant-based eater is important because the phytic acid in plants bind zinc, and certain compounds bind zinc and prevent its absorption. So even though the plant foods have zinc, they're not absorbed as readily as they would be from animal products. And then, of course, there's other things that we consider taking nutrient as a nutrient is K2, which is hard to get in the diet, which has beneficial effects at making bone mass and preventing hip fractures in later life and preventing calcifications in the heart. And then there's iodine, which if you're not putting iodinated salt on your food, we have to have adequate iodine. And we should recognize that too little iodine could lead to low thyroid function, but too much iodine can suppress the thyroid and also lead to low thyroid function. So for a lot of these nutrients, it's a sweet spot, and both too little and too much could be a problem. And then of course, there's vitamin D. We want to make sure a person has an adequate vitamin D level in their blood. And taurine could be low on a vegan diet. And taurine deficiencies in certain individuals, because the body can make very little taurine, can create more inflammation in the body, increased risk of platelets to stick together, even increased risk of heart disease and the buildup of AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, from taurine deficiencies. So giving a little bit of taurine to vegans is most likely beneficial to their longevity and better health. And then lastly, EPA and DHA, predominantly DHA, because the conversion of ALA, the omega-3 found in walnuts and flax seeds, into DHA is less than 0.5%. So you really don't get significant conversion from ALA into DHA, and that's very genetically dependent because some people can convert that more readily and other people almost can't convert at all. So that's another thing to be considered, that we want people to get a blood test if they're a vegan to monitor their omega-3 index to make sure they have a healthy index above 5. Because indexes that are too low, omega-3 index that could get low from following a plant-based diet, could lead to cognitive impairment and shrinkage of the brain with aging. And also it's been linked in more recent studies to just higher early life death, in other words, decreased mortality from very low omega-3 index scores. So I'm suggesting that the maximizing human longevity and human performance later on in life, we're moving the diet more plant-based and supplementing judiciously but intelligently to optimize some nutrient levels that might not be optimized in your diet, though we're recognizing that the broad spectrum of colorful plants you eat gives you the widest array of phytochemicals and antioxidants that protect you against cancer and slow the aging process that you just can't get when you're eating processed foods or animal products. That wide array of phytochemicals, you're not supplementing for that. You're eating your diet to get that wide array of phytochemicals and antioxidants. Just to go into this a little more depth, because some people have some confusion about that, they think that they can get sufficient omega-3 fatty acids from eating plant foods like walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds that are high in an omega-3 called ALA, because the body can convert ALA first into EPA and then into DHA. What I'm saying is that, just to be clear here, that has been adequately studied and shown that the conversion is not only very low, but it's very individualized and different from person to person. So obviously there was a study done on 166 vegans that showed that about 60% were significantly deficient in the omega-3 index, representing the amount of DHA on the cell membranes. And then they analyzed their diets and saw which of those were eating a high amount of omega-3 or ALA in their diet in the form of plants, and they found that there was not a correlation between higher levels of ALA and whether they had better levels of omega-3 index or poor levels of omega-3 index. And then interventionally, when people try to increase their amount of omega-3 plant foods, does that make the DHA and the omega-3 index go higher? And the answer to that question is it only sometimes works. That most often it doesn't work. We're finding out that most of the evidence suggests that the ability to convert is not only low, but it's very individualized by genetics, that some people are better converters than others. I've seen people can eat a diet and can have with no supplementation, with an omega-3 index of 7 or 8, and other people trying to enhance their amount of omega-3 to very high levels and restricting omega-6 to very low levels, and still can't get their levels above 4, or 3 or 4. So we're saying here that if you want to do what's right for yourself and not take chances with your life, this is a blood test that's worth getting. And that's an omega-3 index. because we can't guarantee, and nobody can tell you, no nutritional guru can tell you it's safe not to supplement until you've tested your own blood and you see whether you have adequate amounts. And I'm suggesting that more than 70% of vegans, no matter how much nutritional gymnastics they apply trying to get their DHA levels high, cannot do it unless they supplement with a plant form of EPA or DHA, and then some of them even have to adjust the supplemental vegan form to get their levels above 5, because we know now that that level, that number really plays an important role in later life health, especially over the age of 85. And I'm saying something quite radical here. I'm saying that I expect a normal human lifespan to be between 96 and 106 years old, not between 75 and 82 like in America. There's a wide bell of genetic variance on the American diet, but as you move your diet towards what I call a nutritarian diet, or one that's designed to maximize human longevity, it narrows the bell. It suppresses genetic differences. It silences genetic defects. It prevents cancer from killing people young, and it pretty much wipes out your probability of having a heart attack or a stroke. So now it's usually immune system deficiencies and nutritional deficiencies and neurologic disorders and infectious-related deaths that lead to the winding down of the human lifespan, not traditional heart attacks and strokes and common cancers like breast and prostate cancer. So we're saying here that these critical issues now become important, not for the average American, because their diet is so bad and they're going to die younger anyway. But for this really healthy person that's going to live into their late 90s, we want to make sure they're alive with their full mental faculties, and then paying attention to the supplements we're talking about here. And you can't start it when you're 90. And if you already have brain shrinkage that occurs in your 70s and 80s, and the time you have, cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease or dementia when you're 90 or 95, it's too late to fix it. We got to start now making sure our omega-3 index is adequate. So when we get to live that long, and if this dietary intervention we're advocating enables people to live that long, that's why we have to pay greater attention to agility, right? If they don't fall down and break a hip, muscle and bone strength, brain size, and brain health and immune system function, stabilizing telomeres and stem cells. In other words, we really know so much about maximizing human longevity that we can really intercede in a person's lifestyle habits and make them live longer with the assurance that they'll be protected against dementia and diseases of frailty with aging that other older people get. Because you know how people think. They'll say, oh, I don't even want to live that long. Because if you live that long, we'll be so unhealthy. I'll be in a nursing home. The quality of life will be so poor. And I'm saying, no. We have this scientific ability to have people live that long with their full physical and mental faculties intact, so they still have high performance in their 90s, enjoying their life. I was playing singles tennis with Jack Duntrop, who had 2 heart attacks in his 50s, but lived to be his late 90s. And I was playing him singles tennis when he was in his early 90s, to give an example. But in any case, I'm saying right now is with this knowledge we have today, and not gambling with philosophies and opinions, but going with the overall amount of evidence from scientific literature and erring on the side of caution, right? Making sure we don't advise people on any nutritional portfolio that possibly puts them at risk or deficient of developing a later life problem. Certainly most dementia is caused by phytochemical and vegetable deficiencies, not by DHA deficiency. That's a very small amount of dementias are caused by DHA deficiencies. But in a healthy eating vegan, they're not going to have the phytochemical deficiency dementia cause. They're going to have the DHA deficiency omega cause dementia as a possibility. And we want to remove that possibility and not get anybody in trouble. And my career taking care of large thousands of people in the vegan community over the last 3 or 4 decades has been a testament to these healthy plant-based eaters getting themselves into trouble in later life because they didn't pay attention to these details that could result in some issue like that. So I want to just say that take a blood test. If you think you're so against taking a supplement and you want to believe that your food diet is so good that your DHA is going to be adequate, then what's the risk for you to take a $100 blood test and see what your level is to make sure that what you're doing isn't gambling, taking a gamble with your own life? I'd like to say that before I transition again to repeat and to reiterate the supplements that vegans need or meat eaters need, the supplements I'm recommending people take, I want to make it clear that I do think that most supplements people take are marketing ploys that say incorrect information and contain potentially harmful ingredients. And that's important to bring people's attention to, particularly the meta-analysis on all the studies on vitamin A supplementation, folic acid supplementation, beta-carotene supplementation, and vitamin E supplementation, which all can be dangerous. And the most dangerous, because it's so ubiquitously used, is probably folic acid supplementation. Because folic acid is not found in real food. It's folate, a different compound that's found in fruits and vegetables and beans. People are told to take folic acid during their childbearing years to prevent birth defects because they're not eating vegetables. The American population only eats 2% of calories in vegetables. And the lack of vegetables in the diet are linked to having children with childhood cancer. The leading cause of death in children, other than accidents, is acute blastocytic leukemia, linked to processed meats in the diet of the mother before conception even, and the lack of green vegetables in the diet. It's not just folate you get from green vegetables. You get thousands of other beneficial nutrients that reduce the risk of cancer and autism and infections and allergies and having a healthier and other types of birth defects. So the medical profession and the health profession and the health authorities do people a major disservice advocating folic acid to prevent birth defects instead of advocating high vegetable consumption to prevent birth defects. Because if we advocated vegetable adequacy to get enough folate, then we'd knock out not just spinal, neural tube defects, but also a lot of other diseases, including childhood cancer and brain tumors that are increased when the parents or the mother eats improperly, And so the folic acid is like an enabler. It's a permission slip, which tells people you don't have to worry about your diet. You just eat fast food and processed foods and think you're going to be okay with a folic acid pill. You can't be okay with the folic acid pill. And likewise, you can't be taking vitamin E. Animal products don't have vitamin E in them or don't have a significant amount. You have to get that from eating nuts and seeds and beans and greens. And taking vitamin E can't take the place of that because there's so many different vitamin E fragments that you get a synergy of the symphony orchestra of vitamin E, different types of vitamin E playing in the full matrix of food. The same thing with people trying to take beta-carotene. There's about 100 different carotenoids. If you just take beta-carotene, it blocks the uptake of other critical carotenoids, and it works in conjunction with a whole symphony orchestra, a whole rainbow of other carotenoids we get from natural foods. So that's why beta-carotene might be linked to increased risk of cancers like lung cancer. But the most dangerous supplement of all, in the major study, a meta-analysis looking at risk of cancer from taking supplements, the most dangerous supplement was people taking vitamin A, like acetal and retinol palmitate, increasing risk of cancer. So I'm naming ingredients right now that are found in typical multivitamins people take from all, they go to the health food store, they get them on the internet, they see them advertised, cheap ones, expensive ones. They contain these potentially cancer-causing ingredients. So I'm saying we want to get the nutrients that we can get from food. We don't want to take vitamin E when we can get that from eating, nuts and seeds. We don't want to take beta-carotene when our diet is super high in carotenoids from natural foods. We don't want to be taking, right? So these are the nutrients we can get. And animal products have no vitamin C, but we don't need high-dose vitamin C if our diet is largely all natural plants and about half of that's raw. You're getting tons of vitamin C. We have to think what we need. And obviously, the meat eater may need C and E and beta-carotene and other phytochemicals to take, but they're not going to get the benefits compared to what they really got those nutrients from the real thing, from the real foods. Because remember, folic acid is not real folate. Even methyl tetrahydrofolate is synthetic. It's not the real folate in natural foods. And so it's still better to eat. And you can't. There's no substitute for eating green vegetables. I say if you don't like green vegetables, you better live close to a hospital because the human body is a green vegetable dependent animal. So we're talking about folic acid, vitamin A, beta-carotene, vitamin E, and even iron in supplements. But these are all in traditional supplements that are unsafe when you're taking these supplements. And then the supplemental ingredients, when you're on a plant-based diet, when you cut the animal products out of your diet, the things that might be beneficial to supplements that are not rich enough to be optimal in your diet, let's list those nutrients now, right? That would be wise to supplement. those are vitamin D, which because you may not even need that, but you may need that depending on your exposure to the sun, because too much sun can cause burning and wrinkling and darkening of the skin and increased risk of even skin cancer. But we don't want to overdo sunshine, but we want to make sure, and even vitamin D absorption can vary based on your genetic heritage, your skin type, where you live, right? So we want to adjust that to the blood test. And I'm saying, don't just take a high dose. Don't just take 5,000 or 10,000 IUs of vitamin D thinking it's the right number for you. Do it, confirm that with a blood test, because too much vitamin D is also not good. There's a sweet spot, right? There's a curve of too little is not good, where too much might be not good. Even DHA and EPA, where I'm saying deficiencies are not good, but taking excessive amounts of fish oil, taking 3 or 4 fish oil capsules a day, thinking more is better, can also not be good too, because that can suppress immune function. You know what I mean? So we got to be in that perfect spot of not being deficient and not being too much. Because, so many people will give arguments of why, it's dangerous to supplement with that. Here's a study showing how dangerous it is. Yeah, but that study was taking a huge dose. Because show me, it's not dangerous to supplement a person who's deficient with vitamin D, right? So let's look at the dangers of deficiency too. I looked at this with regard to a million different things. It's always too much of certain things are bad and too little of certain things. So in other words, mega vitamins, where you give higher doses, people think of a little is good, more is better, is not necessarily the truth, right? You got to take the right amount. So we're talking about vitamin D, zinc, not too much, just to take a little extra, like 10 micrograms extra. Iodine, the RDI for iodine is 150 micrograms a day. You shouldn't be taking huge amounts of iodine. Just take 150 micrograms a day, or 1/10 of a pinch of kelp, right? It's just a small amount. K2, which is very helpful to the body, B12, and EPA and DHA for most people, right? And then for a lot of people, I'm saying on a completely vegan diet, consider a low dose of taurine, most likely beneficial for people on a vegan diet. And then the other considers are nutrients that are iron and calcium, which should only be supplemented. So in other words, we're talking here about the fact that some people get iron deficient. Most people do not, particularly women. If they're bleeding more, let's say, they lose a lot of blood with their menstrual periods, and they don't absorb iron as well. There's a big difference between some people who need iron and other people that don't, especially in women. And it's best to go with a blood test to decide and not to supplement needlessly. Because too much iron could be harmful to people who don't need it. Even during pregnancy, they put iron in prenatal vitamins, right? Because they're supposed to do that. But all women who are pregnant don't need iron. And we show that when we give iron to people that have high levels of ferritin and don't need iron, it's not good for the baby. But when we give iron to people with low levels of ferritin, then it is good for the baby. So it's a different, right? So it's based on whether the person's needs are. And the way we monitor the need for iron is a blood test called a ferritin level. So you don't do an iron level. Iron is not a good measurement of, it's better to test your ferritin. And likewise, that what postmenopausal women with higher risk of hip fracture, and lower calcium absorption with aging, might need a little bit of calcium added to their diet with meals, a food-based calcium, if their volume of food and greens and seeds are not adequate. Plant-based eaters have been associated in certain studies with higher rates of hip fractures and bone fractures in later life. And we know this was a UK study, right? A British study, because these people, we analyzed their diets were deficient in calcium and vitamin and protein. And some people on plant-based diet, eating mostly grains like rice and potato and processed foods, are not getting as much calcium and protein as they would be if they followed, for example, my recommendations. And I wrote a blog post on that, showing the difference in the calcium content of the diet and the protein content of a nutritarian diet compared to a less carefully designed vegan diet, one closely like examples of in this European study where they had a very low calcium intake. But some vegans do a little bit of plant-based, a little bit of whole food calcium with each meal is giving a little bit of extra calcium with their otherwise lower caloric diet. Whereas a male eating bigger amounts of food and large, bigger portions, maybe doesn't need that, who has bigger bone stores and more calcium stores. But I'm saying some postmenopausal women do need a little extra calcium. But too much calcium in one pill at one time could cause calcifications of soft tissues and even put calcifications in your heart. So taking like 1,000 milligrams of calcium as a pill is not a good idea. We're talking about it be wiser to just add a little bit, like 100 to 150 in a food-based form with each meal to give a little extra calcium for this frail woman with higher risk of osteopenia or osteoporosis. And then the last thing we said is iron. And the one thing I forgot to mention, the right blood test to check if your B12 is adequate, if you want to check that, if we're checking these blood tests every 3 to 5 years, if we're getting the omega-3 index blood test, we're getting the vitamin D blood test, we're getting a ferritin level, and we're checking our vitamin B12 status, because the B12 needs could go up with aging as B12 absorption goes down. A B12 test is not an adequate way to test your B12 status. You need to do a homocysteine or an MMA. The MMA stands for methylmalonic acid, because the methylmalonic acid and homocysteine elevate where you have a borderline B12 or a B12 deficiency, where the number in the blood could still look okay. Your blood level could be 300 or 400, but if the homocysteine is going up or the MMA went up, then you need more B12. It's better to actually spend the money, get the right tests, and supplement and use supplements as an adjunct to a super healthy diet, so we can have this unprecedented opportunity in human history to push that envelope of human longevity and be super healthy in our later years. One thing I want to make sure that you understand and remember is that ultimately it's the quality of your diet that affords you the ability to prevent the diseases that plague most Americans and to live a really long, healthy life. So you can't think you're going to supplement yourself your better health. It's your diet that really has to do the work, and just fill in some little gaps with supplements to maximize your later life health. And because there's a lot of misinformation out there too, because one thing we know from studies that are large-scale studies now we have that go on for decades, 20 to 30 years, and look at hard endpoints like the age at which people die. And what we find is that the more of these high-protein plant foods in their diet, we're talking about the 3 high-protein plant foods are green vegetables, largely about 40, 50% protein, nuts and seeds, and legumes or beans. Those are the 3 high-protein plant foods. And incorporating those high-protein plants, greens, nuts, and seeds, and beans, are associated with dramatic enhancement in human lifespan. But then you have the carnivore communities and the people promoting keto diets telling people there's dangerous substances in these plant foods. They have oxalic acid that binds calcium. They have phytic acid that binds zinc. There's too much of, there's these anti-nutrients. So there's, and they're just, they're giving you a theory based on some, they're not looking at long term, because we know now that the lectins in beans and the phytic acid in grains and nuts and the oxalic acid in greens are actually associated with lower risk of cancer. They bind iron and toxic metals. They don't, and sure, we don't recommend people eat a diet with eat nothing but spinach or rhubarb or Swiss chard, which are higher in oxalic acid. But as a part of your overall intake, 25% of your salad from spinach is okay, because the other vegetables, their oxalic acid levels are low enough that you're still getting sufficient absorption of those nutrients that oxalic acid might bind, like calcium. So what I'm saying here is that the exaggeration of the dangers of lectins. See, lectins are only dangerous to the foods if beans are not cooked. If it was true that lectins from beans were a danger, then we'd see bean-eating populations living shortened lifespans and having increased diseases, and we see the opposite. We see bean-eating populations having the longest lifespan of any populations on the planet. And in the United States, we call it the Hispanic paradox. The Hispanic paradox is in food deserts, in areas where we have people who are of lower economic achievements, or have people who don't have as much money eating more processed foods and eating more poorly. If they're Hispanic, they don't do as bad because they still put some beans in their diet. And as they put beans in their diet, their outcomes are not as bad as, let's say, other Americans or Black Americans who aren't eating the beans. But what I'm saying right now is all the blue zones, with the longest lived people in the world are living, all have or use beans, and beans are associated with the more beans they use, the longer the lifespan of the individual lives. And the more greens they use, that means the more greens, the more phytic acid, and the more oxalic acid you're consuming, the longer people's lifespan is. And the goitrogens in green cruciferous vegetables, well, we're showing that at 2 cups a day versus 3 cups or 4 cups a day. There was a study on more than 130,000 Asian adults, and showing that the increased consumption of cruciferous vegetables led to the higher probability of being a healthy centenarian and associated with longer lifespan. So these theoretical attacks on plant foods don't hold any scientific significance. We look at the studies. on what happens to people's health and longevity. The small amount of oxalic acid, the small amount of phytic acids, the small amount of tannins, the small amount of lectins in our food is good, not bad. It's good to have those from plants, not bad. And because they're binding calcium, binding zinc, as well as toxic metals, we can take a little extra calcium and zinc if we need to make up for that, and not remove all the oxalic acids and tannins from our diet, because that's not the right way to do it, because those nutrients are binding toxic things and pulling them out of the body too. So we know so much about human nutrition today than we did even a decade ago. So we can really help people fine-tune their nutritional program to almost guarantee them they can live a super long, healthy life and not take the risks. And we know that, to mention that, we have lots of corroborating studies showing the long-term risks of keto diets and carnivore diets, and people who have carbohydrate-restricted, high animal product diets have the highest early life mortality, the shortest lifespans long-term. So even if people are feeling good in the short run, and they're showing, they're ripped, their cholesterol looks better, they've lost some weight, their glucose number looks better, but that's just still a short-term study looking at a soft endpoint. A hard endpoint means you got to follow these people till they die and see how long they lived. And we have that data today, and those people don't live long doing that, trying to eat more animal products. It's just, there's too much evidence to show that that's a mistaken notion that's leading people down a path of danger. So we have so much good information to give people today, to share with them, so they can protect their health and control their health destiny. So I'm saying something radical. I'm saying we can win the war on cancer. You don't have to get breast cancer. You don't have to get prostate cancer. And you don't have to get dementia or heart attacks or strokes. That nutritional excellence and nutritional science has the answer if you study it in a comprehensive fashion and use the best of what we got.
Joel Fuhrman is a legend who just shared so much life-changing information with us. I really hope you took notes so you can start implementing his wisdom right away. I'll see you again soon. Hey, it's Nathan Crane here, joining you once again as the co-host for this inspiring documentary series. When we talk about supplements, it's usually because we want to add something to our body that we're lacking, right? But what about when you need to take away things? Our next guest brings a unique perspective to the topic of supplementation. Jonathan Otto is an investigative journalist, filmmaker, and humanitarian who is also the founder of the Well of Life brand of supplements. In this interview, not only do you hear from Jonathan about how he was inspired by his own health challenges, but you'll hear directly from a woman that completely transformed her health through supplementation. You're going to want to pay close attention to this one.
So the thing that motivated me was my own health. I was struggling with my health as a child, and I found myself sick, continually fatigued, chronically fatigued, multiple different blood diseases like cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr, Ross River fever, glandular fever, and just seeing that Lyme disease. So I started to realize that modern medicine couldn't help me, which was really disappointing. I thought, look, the doctors should be able to solve this. So it certainly put me in this frame of mind that I had to work out if there was a solution to these problems, because if I couldn't find a solution, then my health would be compromised for the rest of my life. And I had my whole life ahead of me. I was super ambitious as a child. And I started to recognize that the world that I wanted to help relied on me getting well myself. And I was doing lots of humanitarian work. I was traveling through Africa and Asia. And it was on some of those trips, I realized, wow, I can't even handle this. And I'd be traveling with people that were a lot older than me. Like I'd be in my early 20s at certain points when I was doing these things. And then I'd have people with me that were in their mid 60s, and I'm way more fatigued than them. I'm the one that's having to take all lie down in the street and to try to get some energy. So I'd literally just lie down in the street and say, can you just keep an eye on me for a second? I'm just trying to get some energy so I can kind of go about my day. So I really found myself in a position where I wanted to be better myself. And so I took the skills that I had in investigative journalism. I did a degree in journalism in Australia and also with a major in media production. So I learned skills that I could use to communicate. And the reason why I was learning those skills was because I worked in humanitarian aid work with World Vision as an aid ambassador. teaching the world about the issues of what goes on in the developing world. And I felt like the best degree I could get to help the world would be one where I could cover world-related issues with media production and journalism. So then I took that skill set to then investigate health, the real cause, what's really at the root of autoimmune disease and the whole spectrum of disease, including cancer. And I worked on some life-changing programs that spread out throughout the world because we were finding real answers. And I was deeply motivated personally, and my own recovery and my own health was certainly a catalyst to then taking the information to the world. It's really sad to see how many people suffer because of what we would really classify as environmental disease, where you have toxic threats that you've been exposed to without your knowledge. For example, every baby is born today with an average of 287 chemicals found in the umbilical cord, which shows you that from day one, we're all compromised, all of us. And then we're now trying to deal with the residual effect of having ourselves been exposed to toxins and eating foods that are highly toxic without us even realizing. And so there's this huge assault that's going on. And what happens when a gut becomes damaged and microbiome is being killed, even by pesticides and herbicides and fungicides and larvicides that are in food because it's being sprayed on the food and it doesn't leave. It's actually baked into the food that you're eating and into the grains, into the fruit, into the vegetables. And then what's happening is then it's causing the microbiome to be killed because these are killing life. The last word side, or the last aspect of the word larvicide, pesticide, is all death, suicide. It's the killing of the organisms. And so our microbiome is even more sensitive than the pests that are plaguing the crops. And so what happens is once we damage this microbiome like this, it also becomes a breeding ground for parasites, because the number one defense we really have against parasites is our microbiome. So our natural composition will fight off and kill parasites upon contact. But this is what's causing the overgrowth of parasites across the world in Western countries. So you see stats like, for example, the Toxoplasma gondii parasite is prevalent in over 60 million Americans. That's one of hundreds of parasites that infect humans. And just one of them, 60 million Americans have that parasite. If you have that parasite, you are 7 times more likely to attempt suicide. And so the effects of these parasites on mental illness is no one can estimate really exactly how much damage it's done and how many people have felt completely at their wits' end. And it's because of a toxic infection. The same thing is true for heavy metals. Our bodies don't naturally remove aluminum and mercury and cadmium and antimony, these toxic heavy metals. They're not naturally expelled from the body very easily. And if we have the MTHFR gene mutation, we have a harder time getting out these metals, chelating them naturally with our body's innate immune system. And so what's happening is we're getting this buildup and it's spreading across our body. One of the things that people don't talk about often is the fact that our receptor sites for zinc and magnesium, which are also heavy minerals, and if you look at them on the table of elements, they have similar compositions. And what happens is the mercury and the aluminum gets picked up. So the deficiency creates this huge issue where our bodies are now picking up metals that shouldn't be in our body at all. And now they're getting distributed across the bodies and deposited into organs and bone and muscle and all throughout our body. And so we then need to start looking at how do we take substances that will help to remove these toxic threats out of our body. And that becomes an amazing focus to put our energy on, because when people do that, they start seeing the most remarkable results. And one of the people that you and I have talked about and that I've shared with you is a woman named Natalia that came to us, and she just had the most severe conditions you could imagine. To give you a picture, this woman for 5.5 years had tried to get better. The woman had only eaten at McDonald's once in her life. So she wasn't the fast food junkie. And yet at the end of the 5.5 years of trying to get better and spending over $200,000 on functional medicine practitioners, on medical doctors, on clinics. I mean, she was at the Cleveland Clinic. It's not like she went to the bottom of the barrel. She went to the top of the functional medicine, natural medicine, that world, and she went to the top of the conventional world. And yet she was told at the end of it, that she'd have to have both her legs amputated in 2 weeks' time unless she was able to get high-dose chemo and steroids in order to reduce the inflammation. Of course, she opted for that versus a leg amputation, but the result of that was that she was losing kidney function and her kidneys were shrinking. And they said, oh, don't worry, when that happens, because it will happen, when that happens, we'll just put you on dialysis. And she thought, this is hell. My life is already hell. And her only thought of joy, she told me, was to think of taking her own life. And she said, I'd never been depressed in my life before, and this is what was happening to me.
My journey started about 5.5 years ago. Before, I consider myself like relatively healthy. I was under terrible stress for about 2 years. I guess it's when it started. I got stomach infection from raw fish. And after that, I remember like it was yesterday, in the morning I couldn't not even stand. I couldn't even turn my head. Of course, I went to doctor and they didn't know what is this. They did a lot of tests, bunch of different tests. After that, they told me, okay, now we know it's vasculitis, inflammation of vascular system. Almost no blood goes to your legs. If you would not take right now chemo and steroids, we give you maximum 2 weeks. Finally, I gave up and started to take this medicine. I had pain all the time. Just to keep a cup of tea, for me it was big issue. It was not life, actually. I just have only one thought that is kind of pleasant for me. It's thought about suicide. And this is why you go to conventional medicine. This is why you take these terrible pills. After that, suicide looks like pleasure, like maybe way to happiness. It was really too much for me. This is why I just was ready to do anything. Don't lose hope. Solution exists. So you start to look further what to do. This program, it just shows me exactly step by step. So it goes to core. I started to feel difference maybe in a couple months. In 5 months, I started to decrease amount of steroids. These supplements helped me, 100%. I don't have pain. Physically, I just feel like I can walk long way, I can bike, can drive, I can do normal things what I even didn't think before. And psychologically, it's of course not just improvement, it's just I'm crazy happy, happy. Kind of born again.
I can tell you today that this woman is the happiest woman I've literally met in my whole life, and I can tell you that with all certainty. She was such an inspiration to me. I had to have my wife meet her, my son Asher meet her, and this was an amazing experience for me to see such a remarkable turnaround using all the things that we're talking about, and she learnt directly from what we're sharing, just like an interview like this, and she applied that knowledge and applied the actual formulas that would help her achieve that result and take the inflammation down at the root versus just go for the surface. What's interesting about the word supplement is that it implies that you're adding to. But what about when you take something that is in a bottle or in a capsule, but it's not designed to put anything in, it's designed to take things out. And funny enough, the things that I've found to take things out the best do actually deposit nutrients in. So they do have the effect of being a supplement in that sense. But the primary reason why you're taking them is to take things out. And, what would they be called? What's the opposite of a supplement? Like a remover. So with removers, or there's another philosophy to consider with that. Sometimes things are removed by simply putting high amounts of minerals. So you are supplementing, but it's having an effect to remove. But in the case of parasites, you're taking often bitter herbs like black walnut hull, green harvested most ideally, wormwood, neem, clove, extracts of garlic. And I always love to use the carriers of humic and fulvic with basically anything, and especially for helping to chelate heavy metals. And so then when you're taking these things, what's happening is it's designed in a way in which to have parasites eat these substances and then be poisoned by them. So they're not poisonous to you, but they are poisonous to the parasites. And so then you're able to then kill the parasites that way. So that's an understanding of how these types of technologies work and how to use the natural herbs that are available to us to help get rid of these toxic threats. And so referring to this issue of diet and lifestyle, it is important to stop the toxic threats. It is important to then say, I'm going to drink filtered water, whether it's out of a Berkey filter or reverse osmosis. And I'm going to do other things like exercise to help my body sweat, to get toxins out that way, or I can use a sauna and these types of things. But, the thing that I found so most effective, for example, in the case of the woman that I've been sharing with you, Natalia, she didn't change much because she really couldn't change much. She didn't change much with her diet because she couldn't really add much to it because she was so inflamed and she couldn't tolerate most food groups. And so she was already gluten-free and things like that, which is great choice in the sense of getting wheat out of the diet because of the gene mutation that happened to wheat in the 60s. And these are good things for people to understand because they are real issues that people face. But with Natalia, what she did was she took these formulas that were based on helping to remove these toxic threats. And so the active ingredients were humic and fulvic acid. And there was a product that we used with her called ToxiBinder. And this was able to help her in these profound ways. And again, she used these all without my knowledge. I came to understand about her story later. And then I looked at, oh, wow, she's actually ordered all these products. And then I asked her, well, how did you use these? And she just used them as it was advised on the bottles. And she was able to then take these formulas, but humic and fulvic acid were some of the powerful active ingredients. And you have to make sure you're sourcing from the right sources because you can actually buy fulvic and it will say fulvic on the bottle, but it'll have 0 fulvic in it because it has to be lab tested to show that it actually has fulvic in it. It's not something like carrots. There's going to be the chemical composition of what makes up a carrot when you do some kind of testing on the carrot. But with fulvic, you could test it and find that there's no fulvic in it because it's from a very depleted source, or it's not from a mine that has a high buildup of plant life. And so these mines that people drill down for, it's amazing the whole process because they're drilling down into what's understood to be the Cretaceous period. So like ancient plant life is being discovered there. And then it's a foot thick of an iron sheath where they hit this like kind of capsule, if you will. And then once they get through that, then you got this soft substance, which is humus or humus, or that's where we get the word, which is humic. So which means porous. And so this substance is soft. The plant life is intact. Naturally occurring in fulvic, you have over 71 minerals. This is so powerful when it comes to something called redox signaling or cell signaling. And what the information in plants helps our bodies to do when it comes to cell signaling. It's sending a message because there's issues in the body. We need the right messages sent to our cells so that they can communicate and send the right messages to get toxins out of the body, to put minerals into the body and to disperse them in the right way. So all this cell signaling that's going on with like rich plant life that's high in minerals versus mineral depleted, which is what we find with the food today. So it's a very powerful source. So 71 minerals naturally occurring in fulvic acid, 18 amino acids, and 13 organic acids. And so she was using these formulas that also had cordyceps mushrooms in it, yucca root, and dandelion root, milk thistle. And so when you find that you're partnering something that's a chelator with something that is known like dandelion root and milk thistle to cleanse the liver and the kidneys and to help systemically remove toxins from the body in and of itself, then you're able to combine tools that are able to go into areas of the body, into the blood, into helping with repairing basically the damage that's done to organs by removing out toxins. It's an amazing delivery mechanism. And fulvic is known to be the mailman and the trash disposal. So he comes to the door, knocks on the door and says, hey, I've got some mail for you. And then you say, oh, great. And you take the mail. And then he says, by the way, while I'm here, do you have any trash? And then you say, well, yeah, I do. Here's some trash. Can you take that? And you give them the trash and he takes it away. The reason why it's twofold is because of the molecular structure. It's called the dibenzo alpha pyrone. And it's due to the molecular weight of Fulvic. It's a very low molecular weight. And what's happening is it comes into the body. It deposits rich nutrients into the cell, which is why it's called the ultimate multivitamin and nutrient booster. So it's depositing nutrients into the cell. And then it is now emptied itself. And then with the electrical charge, it then attracts the toxins to itself and then brings them out of the cells. It's just amazing. It's a godsend. And that is what, to me, explains what happened with Natalia, because I scratched my head at this case thinking, this is just impossible. This poor woman, she's tried so many things. And frankly, if she had come to my desk, and I would have felt so intimidated by the case and wouldn't want that plaguing my conscience of what it would be like to think, oh, wow, I tried to help this woman. She had to get her legs amputated because I failed. Like, I just did not want to have to live with something like that. I would definitely want to refer her to the right person, but she just used the products. And because she never came in contact with me, I didn't have the ability to push her anywhere. She just trusted and believed. She thought maybe this is possible. And what happened was she said to the doctors, I'm going to get off this chemo and steroids. And they said, it's not possible. If you do that, inflammation is going to come right back up. You're going to risk your leg amputation all over again. She said, you're going to have to trust me on this one. But I know that you don't trust me. So what we're going to have to do is I'm going to have to come in every week. Can you schedule me for blood work every week? And I'll prove to you that this works. And she did just that. And every week she'd go back in, her inflammation would go down and down and down. And they're like, what is doing this? You're not taking the chemo. Are you sure you're not taking this without us knowing? And she's like, I'm not taking it. I'm telling you, I'm not taking it. And then they could see that her kidney function wasn't being impaired anymore. And so something was happening. Vasculitis was the condition she had. She had vasculitis, myositis, rheumatoid arthritis, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. 4 conditions. She did have a parasitic infection, which she tested negative for. How do I know that she had a parasitic infection? Because she took a parasite formula. She took one of the ones that we had created with Well of Life, this one called ParaPurify. She took it and she started seeing parasites come out of her body, even though she tested negative to a parasite test. She said on the day she first saw a parasite come out of her stool, she said, I was a different person that day. It was as if my body had completely just shifted. There was something that had changed that first day when I saw that. And she didn't give up. She stayed consistent. She did that for months. And sometimes people would do something for 2 weeks and wonder why it wasn't effective. It's because if you're getting results with something, don't stop. Work with it until it is no longer helping you make improvements. She kept making improvements. So she stayed on for months and months and months. And then she could say, look, I've completed this now once her body stopped having the improvement. But then come to the Toxiblind and how this Fulvic was helping with her blood. When you understand vasculitis, what's happening is the veins are shutting down because the inflammation is so rampant in the blood, it's causing the arteries to be inflamed. And when the arteries are inflamed, they're swelling up. And when they're swelling up, it's narrowing the pathway. That's what's making your legs go gangrene. So the only way to save this person in this case, from my understanding of research, is to get the toxins out of the blood. But then how do you get the toxins out of the blood? What are you going to do? And then people would go and do chelation, which I don't speak against, but it's something that then a lot of people either can't afford, they don't understand how to use it, and it's targeting a specific issue. It's not able to be systemic enough. And so what's happening is that people are changing their lifestyle, getting toxic threats out of their diet, and then daily taking formulas that they can take for months on end to remove gradually the toxins out of their body and out of their blood often can be the most effective. And so with her, she was just doing just that. And then she's seeing the inflammation go down and down. So these formulas are clearly working. So that made me a believer, even though I was already a believer to have come this far. But she really made me a believer because I just thought, wow, if this can work for this, the sky is the limit for what is possible for people. So with Fulvic, in order to make sure you're sourcing the high quality Fulvic, one thing you can do is you can email or call the place and just say, hey, look, I'd really love to see your lab work on your Fulvic. Can you just send that to me? Because I'd love to see what percentage of Fulvic is in here. And I'd love to see just the mineral profile as well. Because you'll find that it's just very fascinating looking at a mineral profile, and you'll see like of the 71 minerals, it'll show you exactly how much of each mineral is discovered in that Fulvic. The other thing that people find is that Fulvic is high in organic aluminum. which is really a fascinating thing, because then you'd say, well, what's organic aluminum? Aluminum is so bad, right? Yeah, synthetic aluminum is very bad. Synthetic fluoride is very bad, but it has high amounts comparatively of C fluoride that's naturally occurring and organic aluminum, and it is a binder, and it binds to synthetic aluminum. Aluminum can be common in people's bodies due to all kinds of toxic threats, including injections that people are getting, all different types of sources. And so, so you can see the mineral profile and see, okay, this is very rich in these minerals. So even if you don't know the exact percentage of how much fulvic is in there, at least you can see how much the density of the minerals that are found in that fulvic, according to verified lab work that all the companies should be able to produce. The other thing is on the bottles, it can say 25% fulvic, 40% fulvic, and you want to see numbers like that. That helps you to understand the density of the fulvic, and they're making that claim. You're looking at companies. So what you can do as well is you look at the company that's manufactured through, for example, if you're ordering a product from somewhere, sometimes what they'll be doing is sourcing a trademarked fulvic. And the upside with that is that then you can look up that trademark fulvic, and then you'd be searching to find out about this company, and they'll already have information that's just available in the public domain because they're verifying and they're standing behind their product. So that's one. In terms of quantity, often the people that have formulated these things know what they're doing, and so you could just look at a bottle and see what it's advising you to take, and then match that to some degree. And then listening to your body, it is just a plant mineral, so it's not something to be really afraid of. If you're taking a liquid dropper, I've often found 20 drops a day is a good amount. That's a common amount. Often we'll say something like that on the bottle. You could do more or less, and then they could just listen to their body at the end of the day and see what is effective and what works for you. But I certainly wouldn't be afraid of it. And if you're worried about something called a Herxheimer reaction, where you're having a rapid expulsion of toxins and basically all these different poisons and things that are in your body that these things may be binding to and helping to get out of your body, then just ease into it. Or if you felt like you hit it too hard and even you're following the bottle, but you just felt like you just erupted a volcano and you just really aren't feeling so confident with it, the first thing to do when that thing is happening anyway is just to open up your drainage pathways. So you're wanting to get more grains out of your diet when you're detoxing, because you just don't want anything like clogging up the system. You want everything passing through. So you want high fruits and vegetables when you're doing cleansing, and lower grains, lower sweets and things like that. Your food cravings will change when you do a parasite cleanse too. You'll stop craving excessively sweet foods and meat. People are craving a lot of meat due to parasitic infection and then getting hangry and all this. And so it's very hard to balance what you're eating when you're so emotional with what you're eating. And it's because you're catering to, like, imagine if you're pregnant, you would be craving certain foods. Well, you have another organism or organisms living in you that are breeding that have their own needs, and they're manipulating you in order to get what they want. And that's been verified. National Geographic even did a study on ants and how they'd get infected by a liver fluke, and then they would go and feed themselves to a cow against their will and basically march in the opposite direction to what they want to do. Everyone else is going to bed. They get up and hang out of a flower waiting for a cow or a sheep to eat it so it can transfer into the liver there. So they can control those organisms. They can certainly manipulate our food cravings. So just consider that. So yeah, lots of life-changing things that people can do there. And I think, just trust your body with it and use formulas that are well paired together so that you're using things with multiple functions. Like if you're using fulvic, look at other tools that pair together with fulvic, like some of the ones I've mentioned, like dandelion root and milk thistle and cordyceps mushroom, and other antiparasitics like mimosa pudica seed is a great one. The one that has studies on it is a 10-to-1 extract, which was shown that it could trap parasites in an hour in a study. So that is showing that these formulas, when partnered together, and what happens is, because I know this, you guys are talking all about supplements here, what's happening is you're able to put things together that help the function of the active ingredient. So fulvic acts as the carrier because of its molecular weight, because of how it is helping cell communication and all these different things. It's acting as a carrier, so you're able to get more benefits out of the active ingredients. Like if it's an antiparasitic formula, fulvic and humic will just be used to make those other ingredients more powerful to help them spread to the right aspects, get in the right places of the body to do their work. So my wife, she really struggled with her health since a child. So kind of parallel universe. It certainly shouldn't be a shock. That's very, very common. And, her sister with rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, my wife with depression and anxiety. She was on medications for both during our marriage. She was really disappointed and she felt like sad that she was on that path or that she needed those things, because there's some part of her that felt like there must be a better solution than these drugs. And then they also did cause other health issues. She had low iron, so she'd have blood sugar issues continually as well. She'd have chronic pain, so lots of issues with her back and neck and things like that. There was times when she'd be getting adjusted like every second day and still be in pain, the chiropractor. So we could see that there was these issues and that the chiropractic in that sense was only hitting the surface level. We had to find what was causing this issue. And then obviously the mood swings that came with the technically mental illness with depression, anxiety, and then low libido, which was a problem. It was a real problem for her because it just meant that we were struggling in our relationship in that regard. And it was just I don't know, like just the fairy tale image that we had of marriage was just collapsing in front of our face. And we just were really discouraged and disappointed, both of us. And we wanted to fall pregnant, but then I said, Lori, like, you're really struggling with your health. I think we have to find a way to get you better before we can fall pregnant. And she was disappointed. She's like, you're just, saying that you're not ready or something like that. So she was disappointed at me saying that. I'm like, look, you have to trust me. And then we went through this process where we discovered the issue with parasitic infection. We discovered the issue with heavy metal toxicity. And we decided that we would work on that. And she would take some formulas and do her best to improve her diet during that time and maybe incorporate a couple extra things. She did a few coffee enemas here and there or something like that, just to add in to try and support it. But at the end of the day, it was the formulas that were able to help her get these toxins out of her body. And I was amazed at seeing the change in her, where she was complaining a lot about her health. And sometimes I wondered, well, you look fine. And so I had wondered whether she was kind of exaggerating or she needed attention or something like that. These things went through my mind. Obviously, that's very offensive to a partner to not feel believed. And so she certainly went through that with me. But I did want to find the answers, even though I was like a hard-headed man that really didn't know what I was doing. But like seeing her change when she was then taking these formulas, and it would still take months on the formula. So it wasn't like a give up, this didn't work after a few days. Like you had to be consistent. She just kept writing it out. And then she'd say something like, man, I just saw these parasites pass in my stool, like get out, she, whatever she would say. And then she would, then next day I'd see like, why is she seems like kind of in good spirits and her appetite is good and she's not getting bloating after meals. And so it was just really amazing. And then basically she completely got off depression and anxiety medications. Her blood sugar completely balanced. She was no longer anemic. We didn't have to go to the chiropractor, so we still did checkups because we like to just make sure that that's all good. But she no longer had that dependency on it. It was more just to get optimal health versus to get out of chronic pain. And so I saw this, her libido came back on. Like there were lots of things that were like life-changing for us. And I witnessed this and I thought, okay, I'm never going to be the same again. This has changed my life for the better. I've got to tell the world. And I felt that calling and that need to do this. And that's why when it came to with Natalia, we were able to help her and so many other people, like thousands, well, technically millions of people across the world have been following our work. And we've been able to help thousands upon thousands of people get life-changing results. And it's been super rewarding. And that's what led to me creating the company Well of Life and the products like ToxiBinder and ParaPurify. And we have used these to help people transform their lives. Superforbic minerals. These are products that we've seen help people in such amazing ways. And I'd been sharing information with people basically for the decade leading up to that. Now I was able to shift into another field, which is I felt like I would be on the front lines in a really exciting way if I could be a part of developing products with formulators and doctors and scientists that would help me understand and crack the formula on how to best remove these toxins out of the body. And that's what we did when we created these products with Well of Life. And that was the full story and evolution of that journey and how it really started with my wife and her suffering and our disappointed, smashed dreams. And then that completely rising out of the ashes and then seeing the beauty that's unfolded in our lives and how we've been able to help other people with these things that we struggled so much with ourselves. So thanks for the opportunity to share.
You know, one of the things that motivated this series was knowing the impact it could have on people's lives. Learning Jonathan's story about overcoming so many health challenges and then hearing directly from Natalia about her complete health transformation really speaks to how profound supplementation can be and how it can upgrade your life and maybe even save your life for those that you care about. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us.
This concludes episode 2. I have to tell you that many of these interviews I watch over and over again. Why? Because every time I see them, I pick up something new. It solidifies my understanding. One thing I know is that when you support us by owning Supplements Revealed, you're also supporting your own health. It's a win-win. It's something that can make a big difference in your life, supports the vision we have to get people to understand natural health and supplementation on a higher level so that they can live better lives too. Really great to be with you here for episode 2, but we are really just getting started. Episode 3 is coming up next, and it's definitely something you don't want to miss.
You can take a synthetic one a day and you'll absorb some of it. Compare it dollar for dollar and you spend $30 on this one a day multivitamin versus $40 on a whole food. You're going to absorb a whole lot more from that whole food one. Because you have to take a whole handful of these to even get a fraction of what you get.
The consumer's smart enough to know, I like this product, it really works for me, so I'm going to trust this company and use their other products. If this company has one product and they're just pushing it out on the market because of Dr. Oz, or they're making ridiculous claims, or they have proprietary blends, then I would run.
There's like some outlandish, outrageous claims out there across the board with the supplement industry, and it's frustrating to me. And you get customers saying, why is this better than that? And you start to look at these things and these people are way over promising.